Welcome to another edition of What Saith The Scriptures television program. And this is Harley Howard, and we're going to continue, as always, in our verse-by-verse studies through the Bible. We are in the book of Revelation, and we're at chapter 15, verse 7. We're going to actually finish. Yeah, I know it's kind of hard to believe. We've been at 15 for a long time, which is fine. We're going to finish chapter 15 and move on into chapter 16. We're looking at the unleashing of the 7 plagues, and that comes actually in chapter 16. And I'm looking forward to that chapter. Today, or at least today's date, is Father's Day, and of course, want to give a shout out to all the dads out there, and hopefully that your childrens or children are taking care of you on that day. My daughter has always said, and I've said, look, if you love me during the year, the day is irrelevant, So that's all I ask for. I'm not into the gift stuff. It's just, it's nice to get one, but it's not like I'm going to be by the door looking for something. The whole issue is love me while I'm here. I think Mom says something. I don't know. What'd you say? uh-huh. Yeah, they do that. Anyway, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And may you be an example to your children, your family, and to others as well. All right, Revelation chapter 15, again, is where we are headed in verse 7. And one of the 4 beasts gave unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials, full of the wrath of God, who liveth forever and ever. And we had mentioned that in verse 1 of this chapter, the Lord is saving the greatest plagues until now. So that's what's coming up shortly in the 16th chapter. Obviously, it's going to be the most horrible and marvelous time in the history of the earth. Horrible on earth for those who are experiencing what's going on. Marvelous from heaven's point of view, because God is to be praised, which is what verse 7 and other verses are going to conclude. It's going to, the text is going to conclude that all of this is what God is doing, and that his judgments are marvelous. It's wonderful. And as I said last time, we often think that judgments are something bad, and we don't look at it from the perspective of God at all. Thank you, Brother Everett, and happy Father's Day to you too, my friend. And thank you for, coming on here constantly during our daily programs and also our Sunday programs. I'm always thankful that God has touched the hearts of people to continue to follow this work, and prayerfully something is said is going to help you. And it's just been a privilege to have you, not only to have the privilege of teaching you at the ATS, but also even here. Thank God for that. Now we look at judgment, again, as something bad, and we start looking at it from our perspective. And when we do that, we have a tendency to question God, which is something, again, let me reiterate, I don't recommend it. I think it's a form of insanity to question the Almighty, especially when the Bible clearly says in the Epistle to the Romans, who are you that questions God? And we discovered when you translate that from the Greek text, it's really saying, who are you that stands face to face against God? You are speaking against God to his face. No, just don't do that. And I use myself as an example, and it's not just an example, it's the truth. And the truth is that if something is happening in my life, I'm speaking for Harley Howard, you do what you want. But if there's something that and again, the idea of good and bad is subjective. Sometimes things are good and it's really not, because it may satisfy some desire we want to do, but it may not be good in the overall plan of God. And we look at something that may be negative, but at the end of the day, it may be that which God uses to bring us to a place where we need to be. So all that is subjective. So, but if I'm doing something that is wrong, okay, even if I don't know it's wrong, even though I might think, well, this isn't necessarily sinful, and it's not, because I'm not running around looking for it, but it has the effects of, let's say, negating time in the Word, negating time with the Lord. Oh, that's definitely sinful. So if there's a consequence to that for Harley Howard, you do what you want to do. I'm not going to blame God for anything if he decides to spank my behind. I have no intention of blaming God. So if something's wrong, I don't say, well, Lord, why did you let this happen to me? Nope, nope, nope. Not doing that. Mm-mm. Nope. I'm enjoying life today, one day at a time, enjoying it. Now, God knows what he's doing. I'm on his planet, in his solar system, and he's God, and I'm not. And what would I think I know when he is eternal and I've followed him for 50 years? What I think I know? Nah, I don't have a right to question him. I don't have a right to question his judgments. That again, that's crazy. And as I said last time, well, so and so questioned God in the Old Testament. Well, you go ahead and do that. You go right ahead, crazy person. But you better learn that context of where you read something. I've talked to people. Yeah, I question God. Like, you know what? Hold that thought. Let me go now. Because I don't want to have to call the police and said this person dropped dead. Too much paperwork. I spoke to people who are mad at God. They were angry at God because they thought God was going to do such and such and so and so. And they were mad at God. I went, hold that thought, excuse me, while I leave your presence, because I don't like lightning or whatever. Just, oh, by the way, you are mad. You're crazy to do that. And the fact of the matter is, she was the reason why her life and her husband's life was the way it is, but she didn't want to take the responsibility. Because in their mind, their religious tradition allows them to blame God when things go the way that they don't want it. And that's why I keep telling people forever, and I'll keep saying it, that I am the most thankful person on the planet, that I never had religion before I got saved. So when I got saved from suicide and from rank hedonism, and then brought into Christ, and then got introduced to the so-called churches. Thank God it happened in that way. Because I came in looking objectively, looking biblically. So when I walked into a church, I was doing this. Like, okay, well, let's see if they're going to match up to this, because this is what matters. And you know what? It's 50 years later almost, still doing this. Still taking that word and measuring it all up. Going like, nope, this is the book here. This is how we gauge whether what we are doing or thinking, whatever. But I don't want God to judge me, so I'm not going to purposely do stuff to want to provoke him and cause my end. But people think it's wrong for God to deal with judgment. And I ask people, well, you probably are giving me a clue that you haven't really read your Bible. You maybe you've read it, but you just don't believe it. You want to get through your chapters, whatever. But who do you think God is according to the scriptures? You know, and the greater question is, who do we think we are according to the scriptures? And so I don't know where we get this image of God that he never judges sin. That's you. That's not Bible. That's crazy. And again, I think it's the part and partial of what I taught 15, 16, 17, 20 years ago. about new paradigm churches. You know, I say this stuff years ago, and people they mock, and they think he's stupid, he don't know anything. And I'm just going, yeah, I do. Live long enough and it'll come to pass. And does it have to do anything with me? No. It's, you look at this book and you look at where the trend is going church wise, and you go, yeah, this is what's happening. And so if I can preach a sermon 15, 20 years in the past, and it's just like I'm preaching today, you would never know the difference because truth is timeless. I'm posted a sermon that Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones preached in the 60s, and you would swear he preached that today. Every single thing he said in that sermon came to pass. And he wasn't even in America. Came to pass. Now, the idea that God's not a God of wrath, let me just say this. The day's coming. And it's going to be nothing but wrath. So John saw the announcement of the final 7 plagues of God to the wicked on earth. And these plagues will complete the fullness of the wrath of God upon the sinners on the earth. The fullness means fullness, maximum, total. When God unleashes these 7 plagues, and things are already bad enough. Look at all the cataclysmic events that have already taken place. Look at everything's already taken place on the earth during that time period. And yet, wow, the complete and fullness of the wrath of God is coming towards those in particular who have not received the love of the truth that they might be saved, Paul writes in the Thessalonian epistle. So it's going to be a retribution of the wicked for the murdering of the saints who suffered during the tribulation period in particular, because that's the context. And that's what's important. So these angels are commanded to start unleashing the plagues. And when it's over, it's done. It's done. So again, look at verse 7. And one of the 4 beasts gave unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials full of the wrath of God who liveth forever and ever. Again, the plagues came from God, from the everlasting God. I want you to look at that, because the statement that's made here is not what I call a filler for verses. We're not, okay, well, we have more room, we can fill the verses up with verbiage. No, that's not it. There is a particular reason, again, why this is there. Forever and ever, these are the 7 golden vials full of God's wrath, who liveth forever and ever. Okay, that's important. Not just finishing a sentence, but there's a reason. Make sure that the grammar is correct. There's a reason why it's there, and it's clear to those plagues coming from the eternal God. And again, it's a reminder who we are looking at, who we're dealing with in the text, and the fact that the eternal God has always executed his eternal plan. And of course, this is no less a part of that plan. This is a fulfillment of an everlasting and eternal plan. So God already has the plan. We don't have the plan. You can plan and I can plan whatever we want. It's all subject to change without notice. God has no obligation to tell us anything at all. That's why James is clear in his epistle. I don't know why we just don't get it. Come now, those that say today or tomorrow we will visit such a city and buy and be here and make money. Whereas you don't know what shall be on tomorrow. What is your life? You don't know what's going to be on tomorrow, because your life is a vapor. It's temporal. That's a very interesting thought. And it's a thought that should motivate us towards the one who holds the control of our life in his hand. What is your life? I mean, James says, what is life to you? What is your life and mine? The sum total of the entirety of life, James says, is a vapor. That's it. That's it. I was telling D, you know that TV program is 25 years old? That movie is 30 years old? That, like, what? It's a vapor. It's a vapor that appears for a little time. Little means little, and then vanishes away. All of what we think is important, all of what we think of ourselves, all of what we think of others, all of whatever, of the totality of our life is a vapor. That's it. Some people's vapors last a little longer, but still a vapor. I use this illustration. Growing up in New York, it's cold. You go outside, and that big old vapor stream goes, but it never keeps going. It vanishes. And he says that's your life. But God is executing his eternal plan. It has no bearing upon the vapors who think there's something. And judgment is just as much a part of the eternal plan of God as any other part of the eternal plan of God. And many fools, of course, professing to be Christians, running their mouths off saying if you start talking about judgment, it proves you're unloving. This is the dumbest thing in the world, among other dumbest things in the world. It's the most loving thing I could do to tell you the whole counsel of God. And even if I don't, or someone else doesn't tell you, do you think that these things will not come to pass? They're going to come to pass. If I'm trying to avoid talking about judgment because I'm more concerned about how you feel about something, it doesn't mean it's not going to come to pass. It's going to come to pass not only on you, but it's going to come to pass on me more for not telling you the truth. Because if I'm not going to tell you the truth, I'm false. If my motive is not to say these things that you and others don't like because how you feel about it, then that makes me a false teacher. And I'm not a false teacher, not even close. Not even close. These are all part of God's eternal plan. All of this judgment, all of this retribution against sin and sinners is all part of God's wonderful, marvelous, eternal plan. As I said earlier, it is righteous, it is holy, it is wonderful, and all of that which will be accomplished by it. Again, we have to look at retribution from God's perspective, and against sin and sinners is something that is holy because it is. It's holy. It doesn't become less holy because I don't like it. It doesn't negate the fact that it's going to happen because I don't like it. It doesn't become something less because it happens to people I know. And it certainly doesn't become less of the plan of God because it may happen to me. So I don't like what God is doing. I don't like when the people say it. And so don't say it. Well, you don't have to be here, but I'm going to say it. Period. Verse 8, and the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no man was able to enter into the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled. Now, the smoke, whether we're talking about Sinai, whether we're talking 1 Kings 8, which we'll turn to, and a number of other passages in the Old Testament. And by the way, this word is used predominantly in the book of Revelation as well. Wherever this smoke was, it always signified the presence of God and the appropriate fear and awe associated with his display of his glory. And that's what this is. Now, I want to turn to 1 Kings chapter 8. There is a similarity here, and not to the degree that is described in verse 8 of Revelation, but the similarity about this smoke and the inability of the priests to see what was going on and to continue the service of the Lord. 1 Kings 8, beginning at verse 5. And King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be told nor numbered for multitude. And the priest brought in the ark of the covenant of the Lord unto his place into the oracle of the house, to the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubims. For the cherubims spread forth their two wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubims covered the ark, and the staves thereof above. And they drew out the staves, that the ends of the staves were seen out in the holy place before the oracle, and they were not seen without, and they are unto this day. There was nothing in the ark save or except the two tables of stone which Moses put there at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. And it came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord had filled the house of the Lord. Got it? Isaiah chapter 6. Same thing. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high lifted up, and his train filled the temple. And above it stood the seraphims, each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, and with twain he... this all should sound familiar. This Isaiah 6 passage is exactly what's in Revelation, describing the Lord Jesus. Again, another reason why you need to know your Old Testament. Above us are the seraphims, each one has 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, with twain he covered his feet, and with twain did he fly. One cried unto another, and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the posts of the doors moved at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. So the thunders of God's voice and the smoke of his glory shook the very foundations of the temple doors and filled the entire room. And Isaiah's response, of course, in verse 5 is fitting to anyone who would have properly responded to what he saw and heard. Because you always have people saying they saw the Lord and what have you, and these morons haven't seen nobody. Because no person I've ever spoken to or have heard from in my entire life that has, and I have spoken to people who have claimed to have seen the Lord. And in my entire 50 years of being a Christian, I have never seen a single person respond in the way that these people responded. Never. Never. It's almost like they're proud about it, which you obviously know they haven't seen the Lord. Verse 5, Then said I, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. That's the only proper response to seeing the Lord. So when Isaiah saw the great glory of God, he responded in the way that proves that his vision was clear about the glory of the Lord. He declared a woe to his own existence. He didn't just declare a woe where he was right now. The woe is a cry of his own existence. He's in such grief and despair. When he saw the Lord in his glory, he cried out in despair of his own existence, because he saw the holiness of God and his own utter wickedness. And that's what happens. When you see God for who he is, you see yourself for who you are from his perspective. There's no debating this. The thunders of God's voice and the smoke of his glory shook the very foundation of the temple doors, filled the entire room. And Isaiah said, you know what? I'm done. I'm undone. I'm undone. I've seen the Lord. And I can't deal with myself. I mean, when John saw his vision of Christ in Revelation chapter 1, John said he fell on his face as a dead man because he saw the Lord and he knew himself. He couldn't stand himself. Really wonder sometimes that one of the reasons why we don't see the Lord is because we don't see him as marvelous as he is in his word. Why we don't respond to him like these folks did? It's simply because we never really see him presented in all of his glory as we should. As I said earlier, we're so concerned and so fixated about the responder's reaction to what they hear is that we forget all about the fact that people should be forgetting about themselves when they understand who God is. I want to say it again. I probably said it innumerable amount of times, so I'm going to say it again. I want to make sure that people understand clearly what I'm going to say. I do not care in the least and never will what you think about me personally or what you think about the teaching. Don't care. No one's making you listen. You don't have to come back. I've always taught that, and I will always teach it. That's why I've asked people. They say, but yeah, we want you to come and minister. Are you sure? Are you certain of that? And they go, yeah, we know. Are you? I want you to give this some serious thought, because I guarantee you that in the time span I have to have anything to do with you, there's going to be some stuff that's going to be said that's going to rock your world. Are you sure you want to do that? Yeah, okay. To this day, I can count on probably so far one work that has said, yeah, we still got you. Every day, listen, every day, and it has been this way forever. And I don't know why I think this, but it's been the strangest thing to watch God take this dirt ball and present him in places that I would never have imagined ever being anything in any way. And yet it's because I fear no man. I'm going to say what thus saith the Lord, and I don't have any concern about whether you like it or not. I just don't. And that means you don't want to be around me? Well, it just proves you're a fake, that you really didn't understand who I am. I tell people, are you sure? I was going to say stuff. You're not going to like it. It's nothing personal. It's just business. It's God's business. So you have to sign. And we've experienced it. You and I together, we've seen it. We've been a part of it. And I'll never forget, the preacher said, you ain't never going to preach in this church again. Don't even think about it. That was on, I think, Saturday. You ain't never going to preach in this church. Full of the staff. You ain't never going to preach in this church. So Sunday morning, right there in the service, right before the message, he said, get up there and preach. And I did. And he was part of it. He got blasted again. Because that's the way God wanted it. I don't care. I don't have to. I'm concerned about, we need to forget ourselves and really see ourselves from God's perspective. And then see who God is. And then declare, I can't stand myself. I think most people have never even got to anywhere near that place because they believe that God really wants to elevate their self. And God doesn't do that. You know, I'm not even worthy to live. That's what Isaiah is saying. Paul saw Christ on the road to Damascus, knocked off his beast. He was a dead man. He knew he was a dead man. He knew it. Now here he goes around killing and jailing Christians. He gets smacked off his beast, and he knows he is in some serious trouble. Who art thou, Lord? No question. No question at all the answer. I am Jesus whom you persecute. I tell you, I'm if I was a bet man, and I'm not, and I wasn't there, but I could probably imagine Paul's like, I'm a dead man. I'm Jesus whom you're persecuting. It's hard for you to kick against the ghost. In other words, you can't win. You're kicking against me and you're just bringing pain to yourself. You're not going to win. Paul gave the only proper response to the Lord because he knew he was deader than dead. He says, Lord, what will you have me to do? That's it. We haven't reached that stage yet because we haven't seen who we really are and who Jesus is. So we haven't had our Damascus experience, as it were. We keep elevating ourselves. We don't get to a place where I can't stand myself. I'm in the presence of God. So all these visions of people seeing the glory of the Lord in the Bible, when they did, they found the ground. We found it. Get down. Like one wife told her husband, you know what? Get your house in order because we've seen the Lord. We're going to die. The Old Testament. We're going to die. He said, if I was going to die, he'd have killed me already. But she said, look, you just don't see God and live. We're prepared to die. Now, we see these examples, of course, but why don't we see them the way we need to see them today? Why isn't there this reverence and fear of God? Because he's not taught like it is stated here. So how deep is our belief? If it's based on what we've been hearing and what we've actually read, how deep is it? How do we see ourselves? And then when we see him, we can't stand ourselves. And I want you to notice this. Again, Holy Ghost, you are to be praised. What I just said, every example, you realize it wasn't until every one of those examples happened that God used every single person. It wasn't until they were at the end of themselves. All three of the examples I mentioned, after that experience where they saw the Lord and they saw themselves and they were abhorred with themselves, that God used them. You better hear me. You forget hearing me. You better hear this word. We don't have to force usability. A lot of people, they create their own whatever. God's not using that. You want God to use you, be done with you. It wasn't until every single one, and we can go example after example, every single one of those people, when they saw the end of themselves, how horrible they were in the presence of God, it wasn't until that moment that God used them. Because there was no more of them to get in the way. That's why I keep asking, how many people are seeking him with their whole hearts? Well, until we get to see him for who he is. You know, when are we going to have our lives enveloped with the true worship of God and so powerfully moved by God that he can tell us to do anything and we just do it? We don't worry about ourselves because there's no self to worry about. We don't worry about the consequence of what happens because we don't care about that. We're just going to trust God, go with him, and everything else doesn't matter. because we're done with ourselves. We see him in his holiness and his great power, and our life is not to be cared to anymore. It's not about us. So we should be seeking his will because we're not supposed to have a will. All the examples I used, they all had a particular direction and goal in life. They're all moving and doing whatever until that encounter with the Almighty. From that second on, everything they were doing was based upon that encounter with the Lord. My. Brother Stacy, you're right. He says, people look at me funny and cannot comprehend when I say, without Christ who lives in me, I am worth no more than the dirt I walk upon. Amen. I know what you're talking about. They don't get it. And you know what? John said, brother, they're not going to get you. You know, read John's epistle, first one. And you're right on. You already know, but read anyway. And he says, you know what? They don't know you because they don't know him that sent you. They don't know. Jesus said it in John's gospel. Same thing. Want to do his will. We need to look at the word and go, wow, this is who he is. And I should respond to it in the same way as others. Well, I'm done with me. I'm done. Verse 8. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no man was able to enter into the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled. Did you intend to do that? Okay, I'm just wondering, like, okay, just checking. So that thick glory cloud which appeared right before God's wrath filled the temple in heaven along with his mighty and glorious power. Prevented anyone from entering into his temple until the mass of worldwide destruction was finished. When that glory cloud revealed the glory of God, God said, I'm going to finish this. The Lord, he is God, and the day of his wrath is coming, and who shall be able to stand? And we know that rhetorical question only has one answer, and that answer is nobody. I mean, it's going to get to the place where people are going to be begging God for the rocks of the mountains to fall on them. Now, I want you to think about that. The wrath of God is going to be so strong that they're going to beg God to have mountains fall on them to hide them from the wrath of him that sits on the throne. That's something that's hard for me to conceive. I want a mountain to fall on me, to hide me, just bury me. It's better to have a mountain fall on you to try to hide from God than to deal with his wrath. That is just like, all right, Revelation 16. The stage is now set for the unleashing of the 7 seal judgments upon the earth, whereas chapter 15 signified the prelude to disaster. Chapter 16 begins the unhindered slaughter of the enemies of God and also the retribution of those murdered and martyred saints upon the earth at that particular time. Not only are the releasing of these judgments important, obviously, but we will also see the reasons why these are done more specifically. And again, it will be the most interesting to see the purpose behind the judgments. Oftentimes, sensationalism and raw emotionalism is chosen as a poor substitute to a bad or absent theology of God and his clear will. God always does things with a clear, concise purpose in mind, and that purpose is all his. And this chapter is no different. So people approach Revelation allegedly trying to teach it, and they're into the sensational. And as I said, and hearing it to this day, every time there's a belch somewhere in the world Here comes the four donkeys of the stupid list. I mean, they're coming. Here they coming with that dumb, stupid theology. You know, not the four horsemen of the apocalypse, but the four donkeys of the dumb list. Here they're coming. Oh my. Israel and Iran. Here they come. Here they come out the woodwork. You don't hear nothing from the. Now all of a sudden, oh, hey, here it is, the prophecy. Like, oh. I keep asking myself, and it's rhetorical to me, will this ever end? Yeah, and I'm looking at it. In Revelation, it's going to end. All that stupid stuff's going to end too. You know, everyone's either a medical doctor, a Supreme Court justice, you know, a lawyer, and now they're all theologians and what have you. It's like, just shut up and go hide. Because you don't know what you're talking about. Like the fool I told last. I mean, this is incredible that you teach a flawless exposition of Romans. God is not finished with Israel. Same thing in chapter 15. God's not finished with Israel. Obviously, he's not. And some blithering moron wants to, yes, he is. And the Jews are living in hell. Like, goodbye, fool. I can't. This is crazy. I told yo, folk ain't listen. I told you I don't tolerate stupidity. Now, you can warn them in the sermon. They don't even. They're gonna do what they want. They're gonna say stupid. That's fine. Good. It just makes it easier for me to block them. I tell them, don't bring no stupid to me, and they're gonna bring the stupid, and wonder why they blocked or muted or whatever. You didn't listen to the simplicity of the big black preacher. You should have listened. Lickety clacky gone. Since I'm not interested in sensationalism. World War III. OMG. Now not only we got to worry about, you worry about whatever you want. Ukraine and Putin keep, I'm going to press the button. One more, I'm going to press the button. Y'all keep on pressing the button. Oh my, Iran ain't going to do nothing. Nothing. They can't do it. They can launch all the little caps they want to. They can't do nothing. Iran is in no position to do anything. All they got is blustering rhetoric, because that's how they do things. That's part of their culture and their system. Let me say this, just off the record for a second. If Israel really wanted to take out Iran, nothing could stop them. Nothing. Just keep that in mind. And I heard a great voice, verse 1 of chapter 16, Revelation. I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the seven angels, go your ways and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. So the order was given. Wrath of God in full was to be released upon the earth and all of the sinners on it. Yeah. Again, as I've already stated clearly from the beginning of our study in this book, some 112 sermons ago. These are all worldwide calamities. All of these destructions affect the entire world at the same time. There are no localized effects. They all effect. Is it effect or affect? They all affect the entire planet, which of course is a clear proof that these events have not happened in human history yet. That's why I don't even waste time with people in allegory and their ignorance and sensationalistic nonsense. So all of the attempts to pin a time and date to these events, and again, as I said a few moments ago, I still hear many pastors and teachers, so-called, inferring their opinions as if to subtly suggest that they have some kind of inside 411 on these events are from men who have clearly violated the teaching and events of this book. They don't know. They don't know. They have no idea what they're talking about. Okay, verse 2. The first went and poured out his vial upon the earth. Again, it's poured out upon the earth. And there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast and upon them which worshipped his image. Okay. So the first and significant target of the first vial affected the worshipers and the followers of the beast who all had his mark. And again, you've got to stop listening to a bunch of talking heads that don't understand the clarity of the truth. The notion that there were worshipers of the beast who did not receive his mark is absolute nonsense. If you take the mark, you are worshiping the beast. It's his mark. So stop listening to present day babblers saying, well, it's just a matter of commerce. It's not real. If you take the mark, you can't be saved. You better not listen to that man or men. You better stop. You better not. Y'all grown. Do what you want to do. But there's some grown consequences in doing that stuff too. The notion that there were worshipers of the beast who did not receive his mark is absolute, total, colossal nonsense. You take that mark, you are damned. We've already seen that. It's just a commerce thing. Yeah, whatever. You take it. So what happened to these worshipers? And it's significant again because the majority of people on earth at this time were his followers and worshipers and had his mark. So this isn't some small, isolated group of people that were affected by this plague, but the majority of the planet. Go back to 13, Revelation 13. We're just going to read verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. He exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Did it say anything? This is just a commerce thing and not worship? Did it say that? It didn't say that at all. Quite the contrary. Verse 15 again, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. You had to worship. It's not a commerce thing. Stop listening to people tell you foolishness. It's not strictly commerce, it's worship. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Back to verse 2 of chapter 16. You try to make this stuff crystal clear. because it is crystal clear. Now, the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the man which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worship his image. You always see those have the mark, worship him, worship the image. Incredible. Incredible simplicity. You have the mark, you worship his image. Simple. So the first vial was, when it says poured out, means gushed out. There's no trickling. It speaks of that which is emptied completely and full and immediately, rapidly. So the moment the vial was emptied, it came to pass in a second that there was a noisome and grievous sore upon all men. That's mankind, women, children, whatever, which had the mark of the beast, upon them which worship his image. Noisome is translated troublesome, injurious, pernicious, destructive. The word grievous is translated perilous and calamitous. So this was the description of the sores upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them that worshiped his image. Wow. Now, the word sore in this verse is only used twice in the entire New Testament. That's here and in Luke 16, verses 20 and 21, when it's used of Lazarus. And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, which was laid at his gate, full of sores. Full of sores. There wasn't a spot on Lazarus' body that wasn't with sores. Full means full to the fill, with sores. Lazarus didn't have a couple of, pimples and blotches. His entire body was covered with sores. Desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table, moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. Same word. All over his body, he had these sores which produced discharged pus. And those that have this, the pus has a certain aroma and smell. It's just nauseous. But the wild dogs were licking the sores, licking the pus off the sores of Lazarus. Now, I want you to go back to Exodus chapter 9, because there's some interesting parallels that both Exodus and Revelation share. And don't you think it's very interesting that one of the parallels that we've already seen is the Song of Moses and the Song of the Lamb? And where do we see the Song of Moses? Right here in the book of Exodus. Here's a parallel with the sores. Exodus chapter 9, verses 8 through 12, and then we're done. And the Lord said unto Moses, unto Aaron, take to you handfuls of ashes of the furnace, and let Moses sprinkle it towards the heaven in the sight of Pharaoh. And it shall become small dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast throughout all the land of Egypt. And they took the ashes of the furnace, stood before Pharaoh, and Moses sprinkled it up toward heaven, and it became a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast. So the first parallel that we see in Exodus and in Revelation is that every single plague in Exodus was set against one or more of the false gods they worship. Perfect parallel. And this was the sixth plague, I believe, the plague of boils. So the boils are described were open, festering sores on everyone and every animal. And Isis was the goddess of healing. And Sekhmet was the goddess who supposedly had power over disease. So these gods were supposed to offer the people protection from all other gods. Well, obviously that didn't happen, because the true and living God is the only God. Verse 11, and the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boil was upon the magicians and upon all of the Egyptians. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had spoken. So you have Moses does exactly what God says. God does exactly what he said he was going to do. And here comes the magicians who've been trying to compete against Moses and Aaron. They're full of boils too. They couldn't stand before Moses and Aaron with any more challenges. And so what was the response? Hard heart, which is exactly what we're going to see in Revelation. That's the second parallel we're going to see. So there will definitely be a hardening of the heart towards the God of heaven, as their idol, the image of the beast they worship, was not a God at all, but a sham, and in no way able to stop or to affect the onslaught of the wrath of God coming upon them. And isn't it interesting that they recognize that it was the Lord who brought the destruction, and yet they would not worship him, but they blasphemed him instead. That's it for today's lesson, Revelation. Lord willing, tonight at 4 California time, we're going to be part 3, Romans. God's not finished with the Jews. Doesn't matter what the fool says. Doesn't matter whatever says. A lot of people that hate the Jews, a lot of people that worship the Jews, a lot of people that love the Jews. And I see people are funny. I'm just like, everyone, let's pick one verse out of Psalms, build an entire doctrine around one verse out of context. I've already talked about it, but like many things that I've taught, people don't listen. Okay, but you're picking a verse out of context. What is the context of the verses you keep misquoting relative to Israel now? What are you doing? There's a context behind it. Why are you ignoring the enormity of truth of their apostasy? Why are you ignoring the fact that they are now not what they're going to be in the future? Oh, we're going to talk about that tonight, because apparently, again, no one's paying attention. 2/3 of that nation will be purged by God. 1/3 is going to cry out to the Lord to save them. And that's when they get saved. All of them. Oh, yeah. You got to know one of these to know that. I'm holding up the Bible. If this is audio, then you'll know that I'm holding up a Bible. You got to know. You got to have one of these, know one of these. You're so sarcastic. Yeah, but am I biblical? You're still missing the point. You're still making this a personality thing rather than is what he's saying biblical. Because it doesn't matter about personality. I could be the sweetest person on earth and you still hate it. You say, how do you know that? Because y'all killed Jesus. Jesus was murdered and he's God the Son. Don't tell me that the reason why we don't want to receive the truth because we don't like the vessel it's coming from. It wouldn't matter because they killed the Son of God. If they killed the ultimate greater, who's Harley Howard? Go ahead and do what you want. But it still doesn't take away from the fact that you're not interpreting the Bible properly, even though you claim to be interpreting the Bible properly. That's a bit close, brother. That was way too close for my taste. Anyway, 4 o'clock. See you then.